So now, brother,
Yeah.
we're going to go to the hardest stage of all to find any even just trickle of a
Yeah.
game there. And that's turquoise. But just to remind people, teal is sort of intro level integral consciousness. Turquoise is more mature level integral consciousness. So what is a turquoise game going to involve? That's, I think, one of the first questions. It's probably not necessarily going to be action driven. It's probably going to, try to evoke certain states of consciousness. It's probably going to play with perspectives, I think, in an interesting way. Might even play with holons in a fairly interesting way. So I had a hard time finding games for this bucket,
Yeah.
but I did find one. So let's do this. I'm going to
Yeah.
close the show with
Yeah.
the full 10-minute.
Sounds good.
Because we'll treat it as a closing meditation, because
Yeah.
that's what this
Nice.
game is. It's a meditation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show some of this, but I'm going to turn the audio off, and we'll talk about it while it's playing, and then I'll show the full video at the end, because I think it'll be a nice way to close things.
Cool.
So this is a game called Everything, and it does all those things that we just talked about. It really emphasizes state experiences. It really emphasizes perspective taking. It does so in a sort of janky, again, low resolution graphic presentation, which I find just absolutely endearing. So this is the game called Everything. And the whole point of the game is literally to take perspectives. So here we start off, oh, I'm a bear. I'm a bear in the woods. As the game continues, you start moving, and oh, what a funny way of walking! You just kind of somersault over yourself. Everything in the game can move. Everything in the game has a perspective. Everything in the game has a perspective that you can inhabit. That's what makes this game crazy. It's literally a game about inhabiting. And I'm just going to kind of scroll through a little bit. So here we're still bears. Oh, look at that. But I'm a bear in a group. Oh, now I'm a bird. That's the other interesting thing. Every time you inhabit one of these entities, you exist as an individual. You're controlling an individual with agency, but you're also surrounded by a group. You're never alone in this game. And it doesn't matter what you're inhabiting. You can inhabit
Yeah. Now we're
everything.
zooming in.
Yeah, you can inhabit an elephant. You can inhabit an ant. You can inhabit an entire planet. You can inhabit a galaxy. You can inhabit a subatomic particle. You can inhabit the first ideas from which the cosmos was created. I mean, this is a game that holonically goes from the smallest building block all the way up to the highest archetypal realities, and you can inhabit every one of those holons.
Yeah, and sort of like inhabiting kind of exteriors of sorts, like gameplay wise, but it is really fascinating because you can just go all the way up and down, in that realm in a very fluid way, in a very kind of interconnected way. Yeah, and then here you are, look how far out you are.
Here you are inhabiting a galaxy. And then, yeah, if you saw that triangle that showed up on the screen, that's your scale. That's your holonic scale. So you can go up.
Yeah.
Now we're into like universal archetypal concepts, for example. I mean, it's got sort of a funny metaphysics to it. And I think we actually just did the classic turquoise move of going from macro to micro. So you keep scaling out and you end up as a piece of pollen or whatever this thing is.
Yeah.
So that's sort of another.
It's super cool. Yeah, I got it downloaded last night. I haven't got to try it out, but I was going to try it out because it just looked fun, really interesting to play around with, and it's basic in terms of graphics, but like when you think about how many layers they're trying to include, the complexity there, they have to keep everything else really, really simple for computing sake.
That's right. And they make a couple integral errors. Like here, you're obviously inhabiting social holons and not individual holons. Come on, guys. You can't inhabit a seashell.
Yeah, this is
a social holon. That's a heap, not a hole. Come on.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, this is a cool game.
But here's the thing. So I'll stop sharing this right now. And again, I'll play the full 10-minute because it's a pointing out instruction, really. The teaser for this game is a pointing out instruction, and I'll play it. It's all based and inspired by Alan Watts.
Yeah. I think it's good to show that as it is, because it shows the raw gameplay, because the powerful voice and words of Alan Watts definitely like adds a bunch to it, but that's sort of like you could play any game and slap some pointing out instructions over it, and it might change how you're feeling in that moment. That's what those do. But this one obviously pairs incredibly well of like, and the words that he uses are really tie in quite well to like what's happening in the game. So it adds another dimension to it.
In fact, that's something I'll ask people to notice when they see the full clip. So
Yeah.
you just saw the surfaces, right? You just saw the exteriors of how the game is
Mm-hmm.
played. Oh, what a funny way that bear tumbles through the
Mm-hmm.
wood. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
You saw the silly surfaces.
Yep.
I want you to notice your experience contrasting, because it's going to be the same visuals. You're going to see the same things again, but this time it's going to have Alan Watts
Yep.
speaking over it, and just notice the
And
difference.
and
Notice how the game comes alive, and that it suddenly is a
yeah,
game of interiors,
totally.
just those pointing out instructions.
Yeah, and Corey, before we wrap up, because I'm going to take off here before you do the clip, just to, we've already kind of mentioned like what would be a game look like, you know, that would be at these higher levels, and we kind of already hinted at a lot of it. But for me, once there's enough computing power, these levels can be applied to any sort of thing. I mean, that's life. It's like these developmental levels show up anywhere in life. So once there's enough computing power there, like we could see it in different forms. It doesn't have to be the colony sort of generator things makes a lot of sense given what's available in terms of programming and things like that. Or this game here makes a lot of sense given what we have. But I think I'm really fascinated when we're able to have the emergent gameplay. That's key. It seems like where unexpected things can evolve and happen, not set automatically by a limited parameters or limited pathways. And then being able to interact with them with the game from the different quadrants, you know, like really like where you really feel like that, where some games it's like, no, this is all about a subjective experience, no, it's all about a totally objective experience. But to where you can really feel, just like you could slip in those layers like we just saw in everything, where you could really slip in not just through those layers but slip in completely to a relational dimension, slip into like a, you know, social systems perspective. That when that happens, that'll be pretty mind-blowing to me.
Beautifully. No, absolutely agree. I mean, yeah, let's look at some of the integral-ish games that we showed. It's
Yeah.
largely what you're seeing is the lower right quadrant,
Yeah.
right? You're seeing the entire colony and the people moving in it.
Yep.
You can enact the other quadrants. The other quadrants are in there, but it's not what you're seeing, right? It's not the
Yeah.
main interface of the game. Whereas everything you're inhabiting, but the funny thing is you're still seeing yourself from third person.
Yep.
Imagine a game like everything in virtual reality.
Yeah, virtual reality
Virtual
probably
reality
is
is
going to add a whole nother dimension because yeah, it's like, well, Alan Watts, as you hear, like provides this like subjective pointing out instructions, but it's like, well, what if you could just be in that is who you are in that moment in the game because you're not witnessing third person objective, you know, you're experiencing. And I don't know how much computing power we need or whatever, but like I think that's what I'm hungry for because when I look at the games I used to play, like at that orange level or even some of the green stuff, I'm kind of like whatever. And you know, so I go back to old classics, you know, like shoot 'em up. It's just like it's just simple and good. But like I mean, like I want to play some of those orange system games, but at a higher level would be really fascinating. You know.
Yep. Orange games are where I spend most of my time.
Yeah.
They're where I spend most of it. It's I get very happy playing orange games, which
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
says something about my development. I don't know, but I
No,
have
no,
to.
they're really well developed games. They're
Yeah,
just
exactly.
they're really well polished, and the technology is well suited for them. You know.
Well, I think what they're still trying to figure out, Ryan, is how to do more high-minded games, green games, teal games, turquoise games that are actually fun. Because again,
Yeah.
sometimes that quality of fun depends on having enough of that earlier stage energy in there. You
Yeah.
need a little bit of red. You need a little bit of orange accomplishment and achievement. You need, you know what I mean? You need
Yeah.
sort of some goals and some guardrails to kind of
Totally.
orient your experience, make it, you know, so that it's a known quantity, so that it's more fun. That's the problem with games like everything. It's a beautiful meditation that you're probably not going to find yourself like, oh, I had so much fun. I can't wait to
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
and play
Right
that
there.
game tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and games seem like just like seem to because of how massive of development is required trail what we do in life. So you know, we've done Orange quite well in life as human beings. So it's very easy to make a game because we understand it. Green games are becoming more and more, you know,
Mm-hmm.
solid is because we've been doing that. But it's like, yeah, we haven't really enacted integral on major in major ways across our society. So it's like I don't, you know, this is not surprising that the games might take a while, regardless of technology.
There was an attempt, I think, to make an integral game The problem is
Yeah.
it didn't turn out integral. And that was a game that again, one of these games had so much hype behind it when it came out, and then it came out and it was just kind of flat.
Yeah.
That game was called Spore.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that one. And got excited about like when I first saw it, but then I think like when it came out, it was kind of like me.
It sort of sold itself as being this, integral holonic, because you're
Yeah.
playing cell, then you're playing as a microorganism, then you're
Yeah.
playing a macroorganism, and then as
That
a
was an idea.
and what I liked it, the integral impulse there was they were trying to create a game that was multi-genre. So like at the cell level, it's basically a platformer, right? At the
Yeah.
next level, it's a different kind of game. The next level, it's more like a civilization game. So they were trying to pack in multiple genres into this stack, this vertical holonic stack, which was integral in a sense and admirable. The problem is they half-assed all those genres.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
weren't very fun.
I know. I remember being excited about that game, but I'm just like, I don't know how anybody's going to do that unless we just got to have way more processing power.
That's right. And it was, it was a game that was trying to be integral, but ended up being orange Darwinian. It was a flat game,
Totally. Right.
But as we're talking about fantasy games, I've got a similar fantasy as you. Like my dream game is a seamless combination of something like The Sims, something like RimWorld, and something like Cities Skylines or SimCity.
Yeah, me too.
You're managing on multiple holonic levels. I'm managing an individual or a family.
Yes.
I'm managing a neighborhood, right? And I'm managing like an entire lower right complicated.
I think that'd be nifty.
That would be, and then the ability to like, I want to make policies on one level that then affect gameplay on another level.
Yeah.
I want like my individual sim to be able to somehow have an effect on the macro level. Like I want that seamlessness.
Yeah.
Between all those levels.
I'm with you.
Basically, I want the Matrix.
Totally. I think we'll get it eventually.
Yep. And it's got to have enough red in it to actually make it fun and make us want to play over and over again.
Yes. Agreed.
Well, dude.
Nice. Well, it's been fun.
Jesus.
This is a fun
35
tour.
clips.
Fun tour, man. Thanks for putting all the clips together. This is really fun. Now makes me want to go do some gaming sometime soon. I haven't hardly got to do any lately.
Well, this is kind of the thing, right? And I probably should have opened up the episode for this, but like video games, particularly for us, for our generation. I mean, we are the Atari, Nintendo, Commodore 64 generation. This was this was like the emerging media of our generation.
Yeah.
Right. I was born 100%. With an Atari 2600 in my hand. And, I'm still playing my PS5 and my Oculus Quest 2 today. So, in a lot of ways, this stuff lands for me in a more personal way than even film or television. It's where I get most of my nostalgia from, which is why I focus so much on the time capsule picks.
Yeah.
So this was a fun.
This was fun, dude.
Yeah. And
I hope our integral gaming geeks enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to take off here. I need to go get to the next things. I'll leave you all with the lovely clip from Alan Watts, because it is a beautiful 10 minutes from him.
Yeah, I think so. And this is, I think, a nice way for us to leave with, again, sort of emphasizing the message of inhabiting your games, inhabiting your reality, inhabiting your pixels, as we'll probably title the show.
Yeah.
It's all part of that, as Alan kind of points out beautifully.
Totally.
Here. Ryan, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. Always fun.
And thank you to all of you at home who spent impeachment day watching us talk about video games. I hope this was more exciting than whatever was happening in Capitol Building.
Yes, indeed.
So yeah, thanks everyone. And here is Alan Watts.
Okay, see y'all.
One of the first things which everybody should understand is that every creature in the universe that is in any way sensitive and in any manner of speaking conscious regards itself as a human being. It knows and is aware of a hierarchy of beings above it and a hierarchy of beings below it. That is to say that wherever you are and whoever you are and whatever you are, you're in the middle. That's the game. Your senses extend a certain direction, in all directions, and therefore give you the impression of being in the middle. Because the definition of a person is where you look from. Now, everything in the world feels like that. And also it has its own kind. You see spiders and hydras and sea urchins and so on don't look very natural to us. We say, well, I wouldn't want to look like that. But they say when they see us, well, what kind of an awful thing is that? And what a lot of nonsense it does.
Now, we come here right at the start to an extremely important principle, which is the different points of view you get when you change your level of magnification. That is to say, you can look at something with a microscope and see it a certain way. You can look at it with the naked eye and see it in a certain way. You look at it with a telescope and you see it in another way. Now, which level of magnification is the correct one? Well, obviously, they're all correct, but they're just different points of view. When we examine our blood streams under a microscope, we see there's one hell of a fight going on. All sorts of microorganisms are chewing each other up. And if we got overly fascinated with our view of our own blood streams in the microscope, we should start taking sides, which would be fatal, because the health of our organism depends on the continuance of this battle. What is, in other words, conflict at one level of magnification is harmony at a higher level. Now, could it possibly be, therefore, that we, with all our problems, conflicts, neuroses, sicknesses, political outrages, wars, tortures, and everything that goes on in human life, are a state of conflict which can be seen in a larger perspective as a situation of harmony? Every minute little fruit fly or gnat or bacterium, I will go so far as to say, is an event upon which this whole cosmos depends. This thing goes both ways. It's not only that every little organism which exists depends on its total environment. The reverse is also true, that the total environment depends on each and every one of those little organisms. So that you could say this universe consists of an arrangement of pattern in which every event is essential to the whole thing. Now, we screen that idea out of our consciousness just as we pay attention to the figure and ignore the background. So we see one way of looking at things, mainly that the organism is very frail against the environment. It lasts a long time, the environment, but the organism only lasts a short time. But actually, the whole thing is arranged in a polar system, where the enormous depends on the tiny and the tiny depends on the enormous.
When you came into this world, there gradually arose into being the sensation of I. And it stays there a while, it goes through a development, and then it drops off. But all the time, everywhere, there are other I's starting up. See? Whether they be human, animal, anything you like. They be in other galaxies, etc. Always, they're starting up. Now, you would say there is no connection between them. No, in the same way, there is no connection between the molecules in your hand. And yet you say it is a hand. But if you look at it under a powerful enough microscope, the molecules in your hand are miles apart. What's the connection between this galaxy and other galaxies? Well, we can't see any connection. And yet there are gravitational swings whereby they respond to each other and move in a certain collective order. See, what we're doing in this is not setting down a doctrine, but it is doing an exercise in perception. You can see it either way. You can see yourself, in other words, as existing only now. That's the only you there is. The alternative to that, logically, is to see yourself as everything. And so in all this, you see, when you get a game going of this kind, there comes the point of what you might call emotional investment. When you feel that the outcome of this particular feature in the game is urgent. See, this matters. And it's up to you what you think matters. We teach our children what matters, what's important for them to learn. And we teach them basically that it's important to live. And in a way, every being in this world is torn between going on and goofing off. We feel that's the basis of our distinction between work and play. Play is everybody needs some time to goof off. But they must go back to work because you've got to farm and fish and manufacture and produce so that you can go on. But when you see you have this terrifying urgency to go on and feel you must, this is important, this matters, we screen out of our consciousness the fact that this is our own volition and our own game. And the difficulty is that as we become disturbed and anxious about this, it's more difficult to keep the game going. In proportion as we are frightfully concerned to survive, we start fighting other people. We start clobbering our neighbors and whatever it is, all the old fights start. And it is these fights which, more than anything else, at the moment, you see, are endangering the entire human project. But all based fundamentally on the illusion that it's utterly important that we survive. But you see, in all this, what underlies is the illusion that I am going on, that I constitute a real continuity from this moment to the next moment, to the next moment, to the next moment. What are you afraid of losing when you die? Yes, everything that you've acquired as an individual and stored in your brain is dissolved and distributed. But at the same time, it is equally obvious that when you die, there won't be, following the moment of death, everlasting nothingness.
So, you can become aware of this tremendous interconnectedness of everything. Just as fronts go with backs and tops with bottoms, insides with outsides, solids with spaces, so everything that there is goes together. And it makes no difference whether it lasts a long time or whether it lasts a short time. A galaxy goes together with all the universe just as much as a mosquito. You can get a certain vision of life where everything is seen to be a complex pattern of rhythm. Dances, the human dance, the flower dance, the bee dance, the giraffe dance. And that's what this all is, it's jazz. You see? This is a big jazz, this world. And what it's trying to do is to see how jazzed up it can get. How far out this play of rhythm can go.